next panel will look at how small publishers and independents can sustain and continue their business, the challenges that the publishers must overcome, and the factors that will aid them in this endeavor will also be discussed. On this panel, we have Ravi Singh, who is publisher and co-founder of Speaking Tiger, an independent publishing house based in Delhi. He has previously worked with Penguin Books India and with LF Book Company. Sudhanva Deshpande is managing editor of Leftfoot Books and an actor and director with the Jana Natya Manch. Yogesh Maitreya is a poet, translator, curator and PhD scholar at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and is the founder of Panthers Paw Publications, the first anti-caste English publisher from Maharashtra. And the moderator for this panel will be Vinuta Malya, who is an editor, publishing consultant and journalist. I request all the speakers to please come forward.
I can't help but add to the introductions a bit because I prepared them. So I'll do that quickly. Ravi, of course, has already spoken on during his chat with Jerry, so we had introduced him. I also wanted to mention yesterday, and I reserved this for the panel today, that in addition to all the various things that Sudhanva does, he's also the film star amongst us in the publishing community. And he will soon be seen in Shonali Bose's The Sky is Pink, which will release soon. So watch out for that. Yes, please, selfies, please make a beeline and get him to sign a few autographs that you can sell on eBay after a few years. And in addition to that, he's also a cyclist, which he spoke about yesterday. So these are things that I'd reserved for today's introduction. Yogesh, of course, we already mentioned that he's a poet and translator and a PhD scholar at Tata Institute of Social Sciences. His publishing house, in fact, is focused on producing translations of that literature into English. And so far, 4 titles have been published and 2 are on the way, right? And he regularly writes for First Post, has a column with EPW, and has just begun a column with the Indian Cultural Foundation. So, and some of the subjects that he writes about are art, cinema, language, and caste. And he himself has been translating fiction and non-fiction from Marathi to English. His last book was a translation of Punjabi poetry into English, right? So welcome all of you again. And we'll just kind of move on to discussing how you guys do what you do, basically. I was just listening to what Mr. Vishwanath was saying in the previous panel, where he said, it's all about passion and idiocy and not thinking about the commercials. And a lot of independent publishers come from those entry points to publishing. So I wanted to begin by asking you, Ravi, that when you guys started Speaking Tiger, the space was already occupied by so many people in terms of trade publishing, general interest books, non-fiction, fiction, and poetry. How did you see yourself making a mark? With what kind of books? How did you think? How did you want to differentiate yourself, to use a marketing term?
So that was the tricky bit for us, because there wasn't really one specific area that we could have or even wanted to focus on, because that's not a sensibility that either of us has, because the only difference was that Manas's background was academic publishing, and he'd been doing that for a very long time, and what I had been doing also for some time was very, whatever, let's say, okay, big and large, right? So that was one big academic company that he was part of, and for many years I was part of a big trade company. So at least in my case, the sensibility was of a, for lack of a better word, but an intelligent kind of bazaar business. There are certain kinds, so I suppose for me it was the kind of books that we would not publish, rather than the kind of books that we would publish. And what was always going to be important, without having even thought too much about it, was diversity. You know, that's the only kind of list that made sense to me, and Manas also agreed. So the thing was just to publish books that we felt good about publishing. And about the commercial aspect, no, I mean, you know, it was some passion, yes, a lot of passion also maybe, but it wasn't entirely that. I mean, we did want to, at the very outset, we did want to make it, well, profitable to some extent. Now, within the company, of course, you know, your idea of profitability may differ, but largely, most of us did agree that we wanted to do that. So that essentially was just to do a diverse list. Make a space for yourself, because again, I don't think we thought too much about it. We just felt we had to do this, and we create the space. There is the space, and I still think there is space. So that was an advantage and also a disadvantage, because if you know exactly what you're doing, it's a very easily defined list for yourself and how you present yourself in the trade and for authors. Then it's to some extent easier. You can keep it small. Keeping it very small was never an option for us. You know, we had to do a certain number of titles. Volume was important, which is why I think things were exciting but also very difficult, and we just emerged from a very difficult period, just about. And largely that was because we needed to do a certain number of titles so that to accommodate diversity, but also to have the volume, to have some kind of, if not clout, you know, presence in the market. People were talking about distribution earlier, so if you are too small, general distributors, you really are not a priority for them, they're not interested. So that is what we wanted to do, to be just a smaller version of the houses that we've been with earlier.
So because I have spent all that time between, you know, Manas being with CUP and other big houses and Penguin and Aleph, you were also familiar with what it took to make that publishing house come up, isn't it? Because you knew the lay of the land well before going into it, right?
To some extent, not entirely, because, you know, I mean, again, I'm speaking only for myself, because Manas was MD, he was running the whole company, but that was academic. We were not doing academic publishing. So for me, yes, I knew largely, but we were publishers, and when I'm saying we, because there are so many colleagues and friends, and we all were. So we were publishers, I mean, editors who became publishers, and yes, we did have a good sense, fairly good sense of the different aspects of the business, but we weren't running the companies. So there were many things that we learned. But I think we were always very clear, because even at a very individual level of a single book, you wanted it, each book that you published to be profitable in a sense. You know, you didn't want to lose money. But what we did, and maybe that is changing now, but till about, I would say, 5, maybe 6 years ago, those of us who were editors and publishers in larger houses, well, we were different. I think because we came through a time when things were not, when we joined, were not large and huge. So we learned certain things. So we also learned that, you know, if you think of making every book you publish profitable, it is going to be bloodless, bad publishing, really. So you look at your entire list being profitable, and a certain number allowing you to publish others which may not immediately seem profitable. So there was that understanding. And we've applied that to this, and you know, I mean, when I say we've emerged from a very difficult period, it isn't as if there weren't good things that happened. You know, we have created something which, you know, more people than I would have expected to know. And we will be able to sustain ourselves, but it is that. You have a business sense, but you aren't being idiotically rigid about it. You know, you're looking at the larger picture, that you publish a certain number, and some of them will be profitable, they will carry the other books, etc., etc. It's a sensibility that drives this, and you know, our sensibility was of a certain kind, and I think overall it's all right. I was just looking at the lyrics of this, which you did not play, the song. And there is this line that it is all right, we'll live to see another day. So, you know.
I'll come back to you with a few more questions in a bit. What I like about this panel is that there are three independent publishers. We're missing the fourth one who was to be here, and it's really unfortunate that Radhika couldn't join us, and I wish she had. We would have had a more diverse discussion. But I think what's different about each of them is that you have Ravi, who is in the hardcore trade publishing segment, so to speak, and you have Leftward, which is very niche publisher of specific kind of books. And you have Yogesh, who's trying to create a readership which is which is almost non-existent in a sense. So there is the challenges that they all have must be so different, and I'm really keen to know more about that. But so then, taking off from what Ravi was talking about volumes, and that there is a consideration of that you had to produce a certain volume to be able to be. But that's not. Is that something that's a consideration for Leftward as well?
Well, honestly, for the longest time, I personally was completely oblivious to all of these aspects of publishing, which we've been listening to over the last 2 or 3 days, the business end of it. I came to publishing completely by chance, and I saw myself as a theatre person. That's what I was passionate about. I landed up in this job which I had to somehow make the best of. And I think it's only in the recent years that I've become much more conscious of the business end of what we do, and I've tried to learn what I can. But it's not something that comes naturally to me. That's not my. That's just not what my brain has been programmed to do. Also, bear in mind the fact that I'm a communist, and so I hate capitalism. I mean, I really do. Honestly, I think it's exploitative, and so on. So now, how does a communist then run a business in a completely capitalist setup? And it does take a little bit of a shift, a mind shift, to be able to deal with that. So I resisted for a very long time, but there's just no escaping it. I think one of the things that we did right at the outset, which has served us in good stead over the years, is that even before we published our first book, we launched a book club scheme. And so the capital for the first book came from the membership of the book club. And that was a masterstroke. That wasn't my idea, it was somebody else's idea. But it immediately meant that the first book that we published, we were able to immediately sell about 1,000 copies in the first month, which blew our head. I mean, I had never anticipated sales of that kind. I didn't even know what to expect, honestly. But over the years, especially over the last 5-7 years, I think I've become more conscious and more respectful of the skills that go into marketing, sales, and so on. I still don't understand a lot of stuff, so listening to these panels is great education for me. I think the other key issue for us has been that when we started, the way we looked at ourselves was very small. Now, in actual fact, we might still be very small. But I think the big shift that has happened in the last 5-7 years is that our imagination is no longer small. And I'll tell you what I mean by this. We think that there's a crying need internationally for a really good communist, hardcore communist publisher. There's a gap in the market there. Of course, there is Verso, there is Monthly Review, etc., etc. All of these are very admired, venerable houses. We have great admiration for them. but we do feel that the Verso, for instance, can be a little bit more towards the academic side, can be a little bit more theory oriented. We would like to be the kind of publisher with differences, of course, but the kind of publisher that Monthly Review used to be in the 60s and the 70s. A publisher that is aligned to and oriented towards movements for social change on the ground. That the world needs to change, and if there are movements that are taking place, then we need to provide the analysis of those movements, but we also need to provide the theory that would help movements, not just theory for academics and intellectuals, which has its own place. I have no problem with that, right? But I think that now, especially in the world at large, there's a gap, that there's no major English language publisher that serves that need. And we feel that we can be that. We genuinely feel that Leftward can become the #1 communist publisher in the world. Now, that's, at the moment, it's just imagination, it's just a dream. But how does that change the way we work, for instance? One of the things that we've done, and which I hope some of you will join next year, is that we've given a call for something called the Red Books Day. That's on the 21st of February 2020. It's the day on which the first edition of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto was published in German in 1848. It's also the day that is commemorated as Bhasha Divas for the language agitation that eventually led to the liberation of Bangladesh. Now, the moment we gave this call and we reached out to publishers, booksellers, movements, etc., especially in the third world, South, we found that the reception was fantastic. Because what were we saying? We were saying it's a simple thing. If you own a bookstore, if you're a publishing house, if you have any space, or you don't have any space, you want to do it on the street, fine. Do a reading of the Communist Manifesto in your language on this day across the world. Now, who are we? We are a small, tiny publisher that nobody knows about even in India. We give this call and already we have some 18 languages across the world that have signed up for this, and we hope that in the coming weeks it will grow. So, the point is that in some ways I would say that the imagination has changed. It's not that our numbers are very big, we don't publish so much. We hope that in the next 2-3 years we'll get to a place where we can do about 50 titles a year, English, Hindi put together. But I think that we now have a more granular understanding, or trying to reach it, don't yet have it, of how the market operates, how the supply chain works, and so on. All of these things we were completely oblivious to earlier. And now we are looking at trying to reach our books to places that were not there on the map for us earlier. Shifting to Hindi, or adding Hindi to the English has also been part of that effort and so on. So yeah, I mean, it still is a huge struggle. It still is something that we need to learn, but I think the big change that has happened is that we have now woken up to the fact that we really need to learn this stuff.
Great. I'll come back to you to ask you about how do you find readers then, because also the ideas that you're talking about don't have easy reception. So we'll talk about that in a bit, but Yogesh, why did you decide to start Panthers for?
Actually, I think becoming a publisher is an accident for me, because I remember I started reading books very late in my life, but when I started I was like, I also sometime I never used to have money, so I also stole books from libraries. I can confess here, but I remember going in 2013, I went to Bombay to pursue my masters, and the kind of readings we were given was something in contradiction, in paradoxical with what I have lived, especially in the language, in English. And for me, my experiences and the readings I read, especially in social sciences or the literature I read in English, so there was a paradox, there were contradictions. And for me, in this particular language, because I think here we are talking about publishing, but in the context of English language, even if it is in translation. So that was my fight with bittersweet relationship with the language of English. So when I found those contradictions, I was where are my realities, where are my stories in this language? So I happened to meet one of the founding members of Dalit Panther, Mr. Javi Pawar, and he had given me, he had gifted me some of his writings, and he had written 5 volumes of post-Ambedkar Dalit movement in Maharashtra, in India actually. And being studied master for 2 years, reading social sciences and literature as a passion, for me what I read in that book as a social history was completely something I never read in English language, whether it was about especially on that particular subject. So that was just a triggering point for me to translate that. And until I I was done with the translation, I was not I didn't think of becoming a publisher. But as soon as I was done with the translation of it, the first question was that who is going to publish it now? I mean, I have given whatever I have translated to 2-3 of my friends, and they just volunteered for editing, so they did whatever they could. And for me, how I'm going to publish it, I didn't know anything about publication. I mean, whom to send. I didn't know how to approach publishers who are interested in this kind of narratives which I translated, whether they will accept, whether they will entertain, whether they will respond. I mean, I had so much of speculations. So I search on Google how to be a publisher, or how you can be a publisher. I mean, all these sort of things I did, and I was somebody told me, you have to get ISBN number, which is necessary. So I was how to get? I searched. I went to this Raja Ramohana library. They were only publishers can get. I was I'm not a publisher. Then I asked a lot of people, they said you have to register yourself as a publisher, the name you have to come up with. And I was I spent 1 year in that, all these formalities, and somehow I managed to get all these things. And I was okay, where to print? I mean, where to print? So somebody told me that I was in TIS that time, Mumbai. Somebody told me that you can approach this New India press. There is a Marathi publisher, communist publisher, Lokvamai Group. So they have a press also. So they can help you. So I was okay, but that was my experience. Not only being acquainted with the publication, but the process of printing. So there was Charul was there. So Charul showed me, this is called this machine, this is the paper, and this is how we do. And I was amazing. For the first time I entered into that printing, and I was so amazed to see this book from translating, not knowing anything. And the moment that book reached, when that work with whatever I did, it became a, it took the form of a book, and I got it in my hand. I was wow. I mean, I wanted to write this and do this, but I didn't know anything. I was oh, this is how you do. But it took years. I mean, it took almost about 2 years, and after that, like once you know the process, it becomes easy. But the thing is that like shifting from this very naive experience of, then I started questioning like like publisher, whatever I have read. So the first question was that why did my stories were not there in this particular language I read so far? Do publishers are naive, or do also they have their own politics? Why do they publish what they do publish? One of the reasons I did not read the stories of my community, it's also because of the lack of translations. I mean, I did not know what is what are the people from South India doing from my community. It is also because I don't know their language, and it is also because there is no translations. Also, a lot of things came to me because of the technology. I think some of us are very skeptical about technology, but I think it made lives of lives of some communities very easy, because it has given them an access to the especially in the context of literature, to the literary imagination of the world, like what the world is thinking. I no longer is dependent on to buy a book of a black writers to I can simply Google. I can simply Google whatever I want to read. I just have to spend few minutes and I can make my choice what I want to read. So that question became a kind of a central framework for me to publish the forthcoming titles I happened to publish. The second was my own short story collection. The third was Loknath Eshwant, who is a well-known Marathi anti-caste poet and Sahitya Academy winner. So I mean, he's a brilliant. His short stories were poems were translated some 15 years back, and they were just lying there on some blog. So I was like, these are the brilliant, contemporary anti-caste poems, or the poems of written by an anti-caste Dalit writer. So I just asked him, like, I mean, I've been attending some session for 2 days, and a lot of people who have so much of experience talking about all small and very important aspects of publishing industry. And for me, whatever I have published, I didn't, I didn't face much formalities. So I happened to read Loknath's poem in English, and I called him and I want to publish your poems. He's like, okay, go ahead. Let me know when you're done with that. I said, okay. So, so that's how it happened. My fourth book is again more interesting. So whatever I did, I just happened to post on Facebook. And these kind of books I publish. I'm looking forward to publish more books like this. And I had a friend from Punjab, Dalit from Punjab, is living in US, and he's like, he appreciated, and he just sent me, asked me, I have translated some of the poems of our very contemporary and well-known Dalit poets from Punjab, and I'm like, okay, send me. So he sent me, and they were brilliant poems, and I was astonished to read them. And because it is the first time I am reading Punjab, which I have never read, which I have never seen in movies. Punjab was always glorified as revolutionary, but there are subtleties, there are micro histories which are never, I have never experienced while reading or seeing anything or any piece of art on Punjab. So for me, there is something, a commonality between how people from certain location looks at the world. So the translator, the poet, they both were sitting in US, and I'm like, I mean, how I am going to publish this now? Like, so they were sitting there, and for me it's like publishing their poetry and communicating from like while doing my own work. PhD is something very time consuming, and it's like energy consuming also. But I was enjoying because I know that what I have been doing, and most of the time I so since it's a fourth book, I got to know some things about the process of publication. So most of the time I ask people to volunteer for designing the cover, editing, because I don't I don't have money. Like I didn't have money then when I started publication. I don't have, because so people volunteer because they share the vision. So some translated, somebody translated, somebody edited, somebody did the cover design. People contributed money because they share the vision. So for me, like, these contributors are also the investors. Like if they send me 1,000 rupees, I will send them book worth 1,000 rupees. So it is like kind of a pre-subscription. So that is how actually I managed to print 4 books, because imagining or done with the book, like post-production is something like you need capital. So if you don't have, like, the book will never take a form of a the book. I mean, and people like me, like I'm still a student, I'm doing my PhD. So we know that this government is something like they don't care about education. I mean, they don't want you to be educate. So for 4 or 5 years there are no scholarships. So for me, sustaining in Bombay is something like very difficult at the same. So but I think I've been doing what I've been doing. So I mean, I think I'm fortunate enough to get work to write which is related to what I'm publishing, so that I get some money for survival. I also happen to invest some money in what I'm publishing. So I think I don't know, it's no loss, no profit, but the kind of a thing at which is the center of my publication is something like I need to take these stories, this ideology to the people, which was not there in this particular language.
Correct. And you keep all your books in your hostel room?
Yes, that is my warehouse. Yeah, like that's my warehouse, that is my workstation. And
if you meet Yogesh anywhere, and we've met a few times, he's always with a book that is about something related to publishing. So he's reading biographies of publishers, he's reading about publishing history around the world, and every time we meet he'll tell me something new what he's read in that particular book. That did you know it was like this. He's really learning as he's doing, and I have great admiration for what he's been doing, which is why I'm so delighted that he could join us here today on this panel. Just moving a bit, we'll come back to a few things, Yogesh. I'll just talk a little bit, because you talked about how you're investing in your own books and you're getting, some of the people who are involved in the books that you're publishing are also contributing, and that's how you've managed so far. Sure.
Hello. Yeah. It's a story, like, I mean, this is what my inspiration to be or to do what I'm doing. So as mine is a community which was codified according to the Manu and barred from reading and writing. Okay. So from that historical movement coming to the this contemporary time where you are writing your own stories and producing also. Because the emergence of Dalit literature was writing it, not publishing it. But publishing also started 20 years after Dalit literature started to emerge. But the thing is that hundreds of publishers emerged and they went, they shut down. Because they never care about distribution, they never care about the political, distribution as a, business. They never care about. So they were very passionate about writing, but never not much cared about dissemination of that or distribution of that literature. So, but there are two events every year happen. One is on 14th October, which takes place in Nagpur, where in 56 Ambedkar embraced Buddhism, and his death anniversary on 6th December in Chaityabhumi. So, if you go visit both these events, what you find is there are hundreds of book stalls, and they go on for 2 or 3 days. Each book stall makes 25 to 30,000 between these 2 to 3 days, and there are hundreds of. So this year I heard that on 14 October the book sale was about 60 to 70 lakhs, and this is just one community. One community is buying books of 60 to 70 lakhs.
And they're priced at? Books are priced at an average?
Books are like most of the books are in vernacular language, as in Marathi or Hindi, and they are priced moderately, like 150 to 200, 300. And Ambedkar's volumes are there, so they are like government, so subsidized. But there are English titles also. So people are buying, and sometimes if you can find. See, what I am saying is that the community which was prohibited from reading and writing becomes a reader, and they buy 70 lakhs rupees of book in 2 to 3 days. So yeah, nowadays there are English titles also there. So and that same scenario you can experience in Bombay also on 6th December. So it's mostly a book event. Mostly it's a book event. I mean, death is also celebrated by buying books. So I think it's amazing.
I've seen a lot of pictures of that event. It's very, very, I can imagine what it's like, but I should visit someday. Ravi, just to take off on this idea of financing the publishing itself, how did Speaking Tiger, how has Speaking Tiger in these years kind of figured the capital for the kind of publishing? Because again, you're curating a very interesting list, and like you said, you're publishing, you know what you don't want to publish, so you're not really catering to the market in a sense, right? So how did the capital come about for that?
Well, no, we are catering to the market. It's just that we are not. That is not the sole factor driving us, but that is a very important factor. What started? Well, Manas's money started it, and then of course the books started earning money. And again, I want to say this, that when we, and I have no experience of running a business like, this is astonishing. I would never be able to do that. What Sudhanva does, what Ritu does, so I don't know what the challenges are there, because I actually don't also understand a very small publishing enterprise run by 1 or 2 people. I can't. I mean, if I wanted to do something individually, I wouldn't be doing this. I mean, I'd probably be a freelance editor. So they are driven by the market, and then the books that we were doing started earning money, and that, as I said, because volumes, and fortunately some of them sold good numbers. And now when I'm saying good numbers, I'm not saying 50,000 plus, but there have been some books which have sold 15,000 plus, very few, but there have been. So we did earn money, so the money to run the business was also coming from our books after the first year. But it wasn't enough. Apart from, investing just capital that you need, also is all of us there in the trade division, at least, except for the really young ones who really shouldn't be making any sacrifices. The rest are working at salaries which are less than half of what we used to get. You have to do these things. And if you think that you want to sustain a certain kind of lifestyle that you're used to, etc., or the salaries that you're used to, you shouldn't be starting a new business of your own. So that again helps, because your costs are low. Then you try and look at your print runs. But I think the biggest allies have been authors, because we haven't paid large advances. We don't have the money to. And even if we did have the money to, that's at least personal conviction is I will not pay huge advances to only a couple of authors, because that's it prevents you from publishing so many more books, because just a handful of authors monopolize all the resources. It's happening in the industry anyway. We don't need to contribute to that and make it worse. So in any case, but we don't have much money, so the authors also then, they can get much more money elsewhere. But they choose to publish with us. So it's personal relationships that you have with them, but that of course is another challenge. You should also be careful not to exploit those relationships. And there's only, so it's all of that. It's the money that has been put in, it's how much you save by not using as much of the money and the resources that you have as you used to in the past. And apart from that, also printers, personal relationships even there, because you pay them quite late sometimes. Again, which you shouldn't do, but they understand. I think what matters also is a certain integrity to what you're doing, and by which I don't mean it as a big moral word. What I'm saying is if they see that there's a genuine reason why you're not able to pay on time, or you're not just holding on to money that you actually have, you just don't want to pay. And some people have that, it's a habit. You just want to hold on to your money for as long as you can, earn interest even when you have the money. So you need to, you should never do those things. So it's about capital, and it's about sensibility, it's about a certain kind of principles with which you run the business. So that has helped. And as I said, trying to get the mix right. Some books that, because the author is well known to begin with, or the subject is such, or you dress up a book and so that you can price it high, and even if you sell lower numbers, the number of units, so you make money. So it's about just managing that sensibly.
In terms of royalties, have you, how much royalty do you give standard?
What anybody else would give.
So there's no...
Our contracts are, slightly modified versions of the contracts that we used earlier. So they are to industry standards. The royalty that we pay is the same that, let's say, Harper would pay, Penguin Random House would pay. They are the same. It's only the advance, the size of the advance, which is much lower. The other challenge is, of course, in terms, marketing. We don't have the resources, and that is increasingly becoming important. Also, don't have enough time, apart from the money, to look for somebody who's really good, understands it, can promote your books online, to have a strong marketing department. That again is something which we haven't had. So these are challenges that work with. But all of this requires money. But also the thing is, you have to be in it for the long haul. If you think that you're going to make profits in 2 years, 3 years, 4 or 5 years, you made a mistake starting it. You didn't get the sense of the business. After you do that, you have a list, and then of course you see, because what is the point in doing something that only you want to do as long as you're around, and 5 years later it doesn't matter. You're building something that hopefully will be around 20, 30, if wonderful things do happen, maybe 50 years later. So you need to be in it for the long haul. So yeah, you'll make money eventually, but till then you try to be sensible about the money you're spending.
Right. And Sudhanvar, Left Foot Books is now, you celebrated 20 years recently. So in 20 years, and what, an average of 5 to 12 books a year or more?
Over the first maybe 15, 16 years, we did about 6 to 8 titles a year. Since then it's grown. We are now currently doing about 20 titles a year, 20, 24, whatever that means. And as I said earlier, we have the ambition of going up to about 50 in a couple of years' time.
So my question was, how have you managed to finance it? Because you don't really, there's no sort of a large market for your books. So how do you use capital?
Partly, I would echo what Ravi said, that some of the finance comes from the salaries that are not at the level at which they should be. And we are mindful of that. When we started Leftward, I have no shame in admitting that I got hired for a salary of 3,000 rupees in 1998. In December 1998, my first appointment letter said 3,000 rupees. Because it was really considered like a whole-timer's wage. It wasn't really a salary. And of course I took a huge cut from what I was getting earlier. Currently there are two of us, Vijay Prashad and myself, who don't get paid at all. Because we have other sources of income. In my case it's my film work and other theatre work and so on. So, and one writes and one teaches and so on, so it's okay. But as far as the other employees are concerned, they are not, at the moment, I don't think they're getting what they deserve, but they're not at the level at which we started. So they get a decentish wage or salary, but there is a subsidy that they are giving to the company. And we want to change that. We want to be able to earn enough money to be able to hire good people at the salaries that they deserve. In the beginning, we were financed, as I said, our first book was financed by the first lot of book club members that became, that came on board. They paid a fees, and that's how the capital for the first book came about. Subsequently, we have really financed ourselves through sales of our books. Literally, it's that. There's, when we started in 1998, already the Soviet Union had gone. Not that we would have got money from there, but I'm just saying there was no Moscow gold coming, right? It wasn't like the PPH and stuff like that. So, and we've never taken money from foundations, from NGOs, from a political party, etc. So, and this is despite the fact that that we have been set up by the CPIM. So we've been set up by a political party, but we've never actually got money from a political party. And our relationship with the party is also a kind of a, I would say, a semi-autonomous relationship. So there's no direct intervention in the editorial work that we do. So currently we literally support ourselves by the sales that we make. Literally, that's just it. There's no other money coming in.
Your books are produced largely for what sort of readership? Is it the party cadre or?
When we began, there was a large number of people who were sort of party members or sympathizers or members of the various mass organizations, trade unionists, etc., students and so on. But now I think the readership has diversified a lot. We are now also working very consciously on a whole series of books that are not that are not communist or Marxist in a hardcore sort of way, but really trying to attract some of the best writers. We recently published a book called Strongmen, which has 4 essays, and at least 2 of the writers are internationally very well known, Eve Ensler and Burhan Sönmez. Now, if you're able to get essays from writers like that, then you're able to reach markets that are, or readerships that are way out of your normal, reach. The other thing that we've also not been very bad at, although we could do much better, is selling international rights. So some of our books have done fairly okay. Vijay Prashad's book, Red Star of the Third World, has now been sold in some 6 or 7 languages, or 8 languages or something. 8 languages. So not in every case do we actually get the money, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes we get rights for free because we know that the publisher at that end also doesn't have money. They're third world publishers just like us. But for some of these sales we do get money. And so if Pluto buys rights from you, you get money. And so overall I think it works out. The other thing also over the last 6-7 years is the bookstore that we run, the Made It bookstore, which initially of course made no money, but now it is making money for us. And that supports at least 1.5 salaries that we pay. The other thing that I should also mention is one of the smart things that we did fairly early on is that we started saving money to buy our own office space. And so where we operate from now is our own space. I should also add that we are a company that also has a printing press. Now, despite the fact that I don't print in our own printing press for various reasons, but we do have a printing press, so therefore the printing press is making some money, we are making some money, and so together we were able to pool in the money to be able to buy space for ourselves in Shadipur, which means, very importantly, we don't have a rent bill to pay every month, and that's a huge cost in a city like Delhi. We don't pay rent, and so I think some of these things have happened by accident. Sales of rights, we never. I didn't even know how it worked. So I had no idea that one could earn money by selling rights. But certainly, not paying rent was something that was very much on my mind, and we worked towards it from almost the first day. And so, these are the ways in which we kind of keep afloat.
Yogesh, could you tell us a little bit about when you started publishing, who did you want your books to be read? I mean, who should read your books? What did you think about who was to read your books?
A while ago, as I said, that this language, like English, so I think it is specifically for the people who the English readers, and I think it is only the case in the recent time when Dalit literature is being published by the sometimes independent but established publishers and the big publishers like Speaking Tiger is publishing translations like the Pawar, Baburao Babu. So and like astonishingly Eknath Award. I mean, Jerry translated. I mean that was astonishing for me. Like how did they get to know Eknath Award? I mean that I read in Marathi and I was like, okay, like I wanted to translate like someday, but I mean, yeah. See, like sometimes it happens, but there is. Basically these are the story I wanted to I want to tell the people, or in my mind, well, these are the these are the stories I want to tell the people in this particular language, because sometimes I feel I read whatever the literature I read in English, it's as a part of my literature course in my bachelor's. Is something like that in the England, this Victorian era, then this Enlightenment and all these things, and I never liked that. Though I like the language, I was like everybody speaks. It's fascination. However, for me, as soon as these stories are translated in English, the sound of English has changed for me. So I am like, okay, this is what I need to do. Because the language is spoken, if it is spoken by a variety of people, it is only the language which is going to be the rich. I mean, so for me, it is very important my story to be get into the language in which I am working in, I'm working on, or whatever language I know. So if I happen to know German, so I will obviously translating this literature in German, so the people in Germany or the readers who reads German or Deutsch, they can read that. So I mean there is very I have one professor in it's a small story, how I'm also I'm encouraged to do what I'm doing. I have a professor in TIS. He's a Telugu and he doesn't know Marathi. So when I translated Loknath's poem and I asked him sir, please can you just go through, give me your comment, and if something is needed, editing something, so you can do that. So he read and he was very astonished to read, because Telugu has a very long tradition of this revolutionary poetry. He read and the style or the form in which Loknath writes is also very much, not only as a form, but as an his style or the aesthetic approach is very much different in his poetry, which is very significant and rare in Dalit literature. So that professor got very much in, like, he really much liked it, and he was like, so when everything was done, there was a time to print. So I was lacking some, like I managed to pull in some, like I needed 20,000 to print 300 copies. So I managed to pull in 10,000, and like I told that professor, sir, I need can you like help me in managing? So he said, okay, like I asked him, like, you can ask your friends, so I can give them a book. Like if they give me 1,000 rupees, I can give them 5 books. So after a week, he gave me 10,000, and he said, like, okay sir, I'll give you 50 books out of it. So when books were printed, I gave him 50 books. He took the one book, he asked me sign on it and take all these 49 books. He said, what I will do? Like I said, like, this 10,000, like people must have given you. I mean, I never asked him, and he never told me like who's 10,000, but it was he only gave me, and he was like, see, like this poetry is more than 10,000 rupees in one single book. So I got whatever I want. You take this, sell this, and publish more books. So I think this is all, like, somewhere it is possible because of the translation and because of the content. So I think for this kind of readers, I want to read these stories, or for them I think I am publishing.
Thank you so much for it. Yeah, sure.
I'd just like to add 2 small things that I forgot. One is that we are also supported by our authors in a big way. Several of our authors actually don't take royalty from us, or sometimes we pay them royalty and then they find a way of paying it back to us in some way or the other. Some authors are paid. We make the effort to pay everybody, obviously, but some authors refuse to take royalty. So that's one subsidy that comes in. The other thing is that we were one of the early publishers to move into e-commerce. So the website that we set up, I think in 2000 or 2001 or something. I'm not sure, Ravi, if Penguin had an e-commerce enabled website in 2001. I think we were amongst the very first Indian publishers to have an e-commerce enabled website in 2001. And we used to feel thrilled if we got 1 order a week. It was a whole lot of money that we spent for what appeared at that time for no reason. But the website has stood us in good stead, and amongst other things that has helped us in a big way is that through the website we've also become sort of web distributors, let's say, of a number of small and independent publishers, including Pulika, Women Unlimited, Yoda, and so on.
Publishers?
Yeah, roughly. But mainly it's about 8 or 10 publishers from whom we take all their titles. From the others we take a selection of titles, also because it's a warehousing issue for us. Because we do the supply. For every order that we get on the website, the supply is done by us. So we need to have copies in stock for the books that we list. So the website has also done very well for us. Obviously it's not the same as Amazon and whatever else and so on. But for us it's a huge thing, because literally the website and the bookstore sales, these 2 things put together account for my entire salary bill and more than that. So, I do believe that it's useful and important for small publishers especially to think about where the market might go tomorrow. We took to the website at such an early stage, not because there was some great thought about, oh, this is where it's going to go in the future, but simply because we thought, हमें और कहाँ से पैसा मिलने वाला है? That we have to find some way of reaching our customers directly, our readers directly, and what can that be? One was the book club, the other was the website.
So I'd like to open up the discussion to questions. Just one second. I know that I thought we'll end at 1 so that we could save time, but then I decided not to. So we will go to full time at 1:30 is when we'll break. But the reason we are trying to save some time is because the awards are meant to start at 6:30 and go on until 7:30 was our original plan, but looks like we have to vacate by 7. So we are going to try and save a bit of time now and over lunch and start a bit earlier so that we have enough time for the awards ceremony in the evening. So having said that, I think Rama had the first question.
Right, question to Yogesh. Very happy to hear about your story. But you used one term in your talk about the business of distribution. I think that is the most crucial. In Tamil Nadu, many of the erstwhile manual scavenging community have got into the business of the septic tank machines and so on, and are the dominant player in that in many parts of Tamil Nadu. In Maharashtra and nationally, Dalit presence in book distribution as a business is worth thinking about.
Okay. I think so. My publication, we publish English, whether translations or original. But there is a tradition of as when Dalit literature started to emerge as a literature during late 60s. There were, as I told earlier, that hundreds of bookshops hundreds of publishers, they emerged, and many of them they shut down. So one of the reason of that is they somehow, because Marathi readership is limited to the state, the Marathi. Whoever will read Marathi, they will be the buyers of these. But the thing is that how Dalit publishers, they sell their book is wherever there are events. So they go with, you always find some kind of a culture or anything, or even there are protests or something which happen across the year. They go with their book, they put their books on payment or the place where something is happening, and they sell their books. So it is rarely you find that they have a bookshop. So bookshops also in Maharashtra, until very recently, they don't have titles by Dalit publishers who produce books.
Meaning they discriminated. They documented that there was discrimination to stock Dalit authors and books by Dalit publishers. In Maharashtra, at least, it's documented.
It is documented, yes, and there are several stories. You can, if you search, you will get to know that how Dalit publishers are they have been persisting or resisting in order to sell their books. Because what I remember is that when I say the first title, which 1,000 copies I printed, and I don't know how will I'm going to distribute. Somehow I put it on Amazon, so people, and I keep on updating on Facebook so people can buy. But some of the books I just have to give it to the people. Some people came and they were students. So the book price was 399. So sometime I sold that book in 100 rupees. So there are, since I was in academic space, I know the the situation of student. So just take the book, and obviously it is I think business is secondary for me. Which is equally important, but the first thing that I did not invest money. It is community which is which has invested the money, so it is going back to them. The only thing so some profit I managed to make. So I'm putting that to publish next book. So I think it is just the beginning, and which is important, to find the channel to disseminate your work, because producing is something else, and then after production, what the question is how it will go to the people. So we need to seriously think on that as well. So thank you, that's important.
Dilip,
when you said about the broadening of your imagination, how do you look at yourself? Are you an Indian publisher who has a global imagination, or are you an international publisher based in India?
I think the R&D will remain an Indian publisher with an international imagination and wanting to reach out to international movements as well. I mean, not international movements, movements in different parts of the world.
Okay, that was a short answer.
Most unusual for me.
So I am somebody who, I mean, I think of myself as ideologically leftist, although I don't know how much I put into practice because I think it's very difficult today. But and also interested in anti-caste politics. So, but the things I like to read are genre fiction. I like science fiction and I like crime stories and I like, you know, this kind of material. That's what we publish also. And one thing that I've often wanted is like, is there room for Dalit science fiction, Dalit crime fiction, or leftist genre fiction? Which I think, when I was, my American reading was started with Dashiell Hammett, who was a big communist crime writer who I loved very much, and then in African American publishing. We had Octavia Butler, who sort of broke a lot of ground in science fiction in the 80s, and I think there's a bunch of African American science fiction coming out now, which is very political and stuff. I don't see that happening in India yet much, and I'm wondering why.
I mean, but science fiction, how much of that is happening in India in English?
There is some. I think there's.
I mean, you're publishing.
There's. I think there's more all
Math
the time.
problems for dinosaurs, but
It's with dinosaurs. But I mean, there are a few science fiction books that are coming out, and there are Indian authors publishing science fiction abroad also, quite a few now.
I wanted to ask, asking this question, sorry, just one, I'll ask someone to answer it, but before that, do you see a difference in these kind of like communist crime fiction or Dalit science fiction? I mean, does that differentiate the crime fiction or the science fiction?
I think absolutely. I mean, particularly in science fiction, like, for a long time, science fiction was dominated by people like Robert Heinlein or Asimov, who have a very militaristic sort of vision of what is the future and very kind of fascist ideas of what the future can be. And when you read Octavia Butler, it's just really, really different. And a lot of Octavia Butler's stuff about how humans could have relationships with alien societies is really powerful allegories for sort of different nations' interactions with economic inequality between different nations. So yeah, and going back to Dashiell Hammett, like I think like a book like Red Harvest, really like that story about the company town, like there's a lot in there about American history, and then I think it affected me growing up how I thought about big corporations. So.
Sure. Who would like to answer that question though before I put my 10 cents?
I'd like to put in a short answer to your question. I'm as intrigued as you are. Why is there no sort of, let's say, communist, socialist, Marxist crime fiction writing in India? Because actually capitalism itself is a crime. And I'm not saying this
He was waiting to say that. He was waiting.
I'm not saying this loosely. I literally mean that. It is a crime. And internationally, as you well know, of course Dashiell Hammett is one of the pioneers, but internationally there's a whole slew of crime fiction writers who've been communists and feminists, and also from communities that have been discriminated against, like African Americans and so on. So it really intrigues me why there shouldn't be the genre of socially committed, left-wing, feminist, Dalit crime fiction certainly in India, because India, I mean, come on, it seems to me that caste is crime and capitalism is crime and patriarchy is crime. All of these are crime. So therefore fiction should lend itself to that.
Because time.
Yes.
When you, what do you use that the word like communist science fiction or anti-caste science fiction? So I think what do you like communism or the anti-caste or the like what do you ideologically frame it as Ambedkarism. So these are the framework to look at the idea of life. I mean, imagine a person who had never slept under the moon in the night, because who had never, simply because he had everything. But so his idea about looking at moon will be formed differently than a person. For him, the moon is the only source of night during the night because there is no electricity. But the latter person had not given a chance, or I don't think so the publisher reached to that kind of person to have his own narrative written and published. So as long as we don't reach to the variety of people who have variety of experiences, we will never get to have any such kind of a body, because as I told you, like the latter has never given a chance in a literary domain to be imagine the person who never had electricity in his village, but his idea of a nature is something amazing. I mean, he can tell you each and everything, the subtleties of nature, because he's a part of that. But these kind of people are not there. They never emerge as a writer, because we don't go to the such kind of people, or there is a huge barrier for them to reach to be a publisher.
Jerry has a question.
No, quick comment. The first graphic novel from a Dalit came out a few years ago. It's called The Itch You Can't Scratch, Sujit Kumar. It's also very funny. And it got just completely ignored. I don't know how. I really don't know how, unless it was caste politics. I find it whenever I review, whenever I write do a translation of Dalit writing, only a very few papers will carry the reviews. The rest just don't bother. Magazines specially ignore, and us translations. So I think there's something to do with, even if these got written, what would be the next step? How would you know that they were out there?
Jay, can I just, about Sujit Kumar's book? And that just, it may not be the case, but I suspect it is. Ownership is taken by organizations, or who say they will distribute, they will promote, and their agenda is different. So I know Sujit has been doing for this online site. He's been working, he's been doing illustrations. And there's a lot that this site does, which we know of, but not that. So I don't think it's even deliberate. It's just that that's not a priority. It's just fashionable to have. So they have it. But beyond that, there's nothing.
I think, this idea that it's not deliberate has to be questioned, because even ignoring something or being willfully ignorant.
No, I'm not defending them. What I'm saying is that, also the other things we can also see conspiracies, and perhaps there are.
No, it's not conspiracy in that sense, but it is. We're not building that awareness and working towards.
True, and also your question. The other thing is that you're talking about crime fiction, you're talking about science fiction. It is a vocabulary from elsewhere. Maybe they do exist in a different form. And maybe they're not important stories for people to tell. This is something that we want and we need. So so is that a conspiracy? It's just that we're all kind of limited by our perspective. So even those people who are not promoting the work as they should, it's not deliberate, but conditions are such, whatever I'm saying is, but I don't know how much of this makes sense to me, that this genre, and why isn't there Dalit, why isn't there Black? It happens, it's good, it does, but also somebody who is not Dalit may have written a book which has explored these kind of realities. There is some crime fiction with Dalit characters, but it's just that the writer doesn't happen to be Dalit, so
Sudhara says he hates capitalism. Of course, capitalism is not very, but it depends on where from you are looking at. Now I come from I told you a bit and pieces of my life stories, how to have a small thing I had to struggle a lot. I mean, to reachability, accessibility. Now, America is a capitalist, like hardcore, cruel capitalist. But they have produced a black writer which has got Nobel. Namdev Dasad has immense potential. I think so far in this last 1 century, if the literature was written, Namdev was the only true contender for Nobel. I mean, I have my skepticism about what Rabindranath Tagore's literature, but Namdev was the true contender of Nobel if his poetry has been translated. So, I mean, whom we promote, whom we talk about, whom we make as a discourse, whom we disseminate into people's head as a literary imagination, and it depends on this. So, I mean, I don't know, it's a whole discourse, but
Would you also begin with how to translate it and doing a good job?
exactly.
Bad translation would actually going to have the opposite effect. Now, for instance, just giving an example, Baluta. If the translation hadn't been as good as it is, I'm sure it would also come and gone. But a noble thing would have been done by somebody. I kitab gayi, usse kya farak pada kisi ko? So I'm just thinking that the commitment to that has to start not just with the publisher, but translators and the other people who before the book gets printed even.
Yeah, I mean, translation is a double work, and also it is like it consumes not only your time but your energy, a part of your life. So yeah, I mean, what you said is translation has, especially in Maharashtra, translation has not taken as a serious literary discipline. I mean, that is my finding, or that is my experience of studying literature, especially the translation part of it. As much as when Pamuk writes or when Murakami writes, then they get translated immediately. I mean, that's how they are able. Or maybe in the south part of India, I mean, last year I went for this some literary festival, and I was I was amazed to see the quality, not only the quality of, I don't know Malayalam, but I had a friend, so I used to ask him, and he's we also translate simultaneously, also immediately. The quality of their book, the content and everything is something much ahead than what I have seen in Marathi. So, I mean, South in that terms is much more, way ahead in translation. Because I had a friend and he was telling me that I was when I was growing up, I read Marquez in Malayalam, and for a long time I thought Marquez is a Malayali person. And it happened because they have names also, some this is the power of translation. I mean, what else it can be? Seriousness.
Okay. Manvira.
I was saying about book selling, that do you think from the Dalit movement you can come up with a sort of cooperative idea, because we have that in Kolkata. We have a number of Dalits who now for about 20 years have set up something called Chaturtha Duniya, which has two avatars. One is a journal in which people can publish, and one is a bookshop where you can go and buy, and this is taken care of by the movement because it's volunteers who are manning or womaning the bookshop and also taking care of the journal, and that has made a huge impact to them. You've talked about special occasions when there are hundreds of bookstores and books being available. That also is there every year. I think 24th and 25th December, two famous birth anniversaries, they have a Sangati in various districts. But it's this bookshop and journal which reaches everywhere. Now there's enough people who are literate in reading and can write. So that's made a big difference. So maybe something like that would work where you are, where the movement is much stronger.
See, I recently happened to review Manoranjan Vyaparis, Interrogating My Chandal Life. and after that I read his article in EPW. Is there a Dalit literature? Is there a Bengali Dalit literature, or is there a Dalit literature in Bengal? So most of the name I read in that article, like Malla Burman. So then I read most of the name and I got interested. So I wanted to buy a book. I went to, the first thing is that nowadays, like, go to Amazon and search the book. I searched, and Malla Burman's that novel was some 1,500 rupees.
Amazon, capitalism.
I mean, see, one curious thing about very classical Dalit like the biographies, even the first publisher of Jutan also selling the book in some 3,500 rupees. And I said, yesterday I happened to go to, again I went visited Amazon. I searched Vasant Moon's biography. In Marathi originally it was written as Basti. He was from Nagpur, and I know that, when I read it in Marathi, I was I can see my city in books. I was thrilled. I read in English in library. Then I wanted to buy a book, and there are five people who are selling books. None of them are selling less than 3,500.
No, but this is Amazon. If you're talking about that is us.
Yes,
We don't sell it at 3,000. You write to us, you get it at less than 400.
No, I'm talking about the first publisher. The first publisher.
Are you talking about Rajkamal Sindhi?
No, the first English publisher.
That's us. That's them.
So this was 3,500 on Amazon?
I have a problem with pricing on Amazon. Amazon does this all the time.
No. Indian publishers' books, if they are distributed abroad, then Amazon shows the foreign publishers.
Yes, Kartika.
They draw it from the Amazon.com.
Abroad, it does not have a separate data feed. They take .com database. It happens to all our books. The international price will be reflected, even though it's a book.
The book will go to the US and come back.
It's a huge problem. I'm glad you raised it. I think it has to be raised with Amazon and the black hole, where you can't talk to anyone.
That's how you become the richest man in the world. So that's how they
I want to report it.
Okay. Yes.
So just a couple of comments, because the question started with Rakesh and Kate Pujari and Madhavi gave a little bit of it already. A little bit of Dalit literature is slowly evolving out in the backyards of Bengal. And if you get into the kind of local magazines and the cultural magazines, it's evolving. And as she said that there are this couple of organizations, and if a cooperative could be formed, the journey could actually reach Kolkata where everything happens. But my second request is, and if you look at the entire discussion, that what I find missing in the Publishing Next conference is the regional language publishing is a little out of the window. I think that's one panel, one session should actually take in place, because Ravi has been talking about translation, Sudhamna has been talking about English and Hindi. The regional language publishing is actually, and I come from a pretty strong Bangla background as a reader, as a publisher, everything. It's completely out of discussion here. And if you look at it...
That is just not true. Every edition of Publishing Next.
No, let me finish, sorry. I talk about this edition. I'm not talking about the previous edition, because last year Leonard and I talked about it and it didn't happen. But the point is that if you look at it, and the questions that Rakesh is asking and Jerry was trying to talk about Sujiv's book, it actually lies in the regional language thing. It has to happen that it's produced there in the languages, getting translated and then disseminated. So that was my idea that, if you look at the regional language publishing, Rakesh can actually find a bit and pieces of all those things coming up.
Rakesh already does that in Tamil, meaning he's been looking at what Tamil has. This conference traditionally, this is the first year we don't have a specific regional, and we don't even call it regional languages to begin with, we say Indian languages. We've not had as many Indian language publishers for the first time as we've had in the past. This is the only conference which has had a diverse representation of Indian language publishing. I mean, I can bet on this compared to any other publishing conference. It is not enough, and we keep trying to talk about how to bring it in. So I want to correct that statement that you just made. But this year we wanted to focus on translations. There's a panel on translations that will happen later in the conference, of course. But it is not a subject that we ignore at all. In fact, we are...
My thing was not ignorance or ignorant. My point was that if you go back, this is the right platform to discuss.
Sure.
That was my suggestion, because I am myself part of the translation panel tomorrow. So
exactly.
My only point was that a lot of things are happening in the background. Let's just try to push it forward a little bit, not sitting only in places like Kolkata. That was my point.
True. And we also, I mean, we would also like that conversation, and we try to foster that here as well.